But another thing that I would definitely put my money on is that it doesn't matter what it is. Somebody gonna be pissed. Whether it's a political thing, it's a video game thing, or anything in between. If you create something and you have any opinion ever in your whole life, there is an entire subsect of society that will spend their entire waking life to try to put you down and stop you from succeeding, which is wild to me. It is absolutely wild to me that there are not only, and it's not even like a small group of people. There's a massive group of extremely loud people who spend their entire lives doing nothing except searching for outrage and then screaming about it on the internet. There's good money in it. There's good money in being a freaking curmudgeon piece of shit who has no happiness in their life at all. But you know what the worst thing is your money ain't going to buy you anything that matters. You're just going to die alone and sad and full of hate and screaming about how the world made your life horrible, when in reality, you just made your life horrible. You don't need to always be a warrior. You don't need to always fight this imaginary battle to find your value and your worth and your existence. You're so much more than your political beliefs and your ideologies and your cult levels of involvement when it comes to social issues. You are more than that. Because I promise you, if you've lived your whole life off of statistics, you haven't lived a day in your life. If you go off and say, well, 80% of stop. What is your firsthand experience on this? Then stop. If you have no firsthand experience, you need to calm down. This ain't your life. And that doesn't mean that if you're not living it, you can't share an opinion. Because that's another thing that those people who just hate everything try to say. Well, you know, you're not a professor. So what is your... No, asshole. You're right. I'm not a professor. So I have real life experience. I'm pulling from firsthand experience. I'm not pulling from a book that was written in the 50s. And you're just saying that it's... Well, no, man, it's a book. And therefore that information is more valid. I disagree. Completely and totally. Especially in a world where you can make up your own titles, you can make up your own qualifications, you know, and just say that you're right. And you're not. You're not right. Right? I need more money to prove this more. And that's exactly the thing. We need more money to change the world for the better, but this isn't about money. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because if it's not about money, it's about power. And what does power tend to get you? Money. So I don't care what any of these moral high ground people say. If you're selling a book, selling an article, selling a website, you are not doing it for the right reasons. So there's been no better example of this than right now with the Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts, the game and the book series over the last whatever amount of time has been wrought in controversy. I disagree. I think some really bored people on the internet have found something to hate, and they are hating it with all of their might. Because ultimately, the idea of turning around, changing your mind, maybe apologizing for the pain you brought is completely and totally off the table. There's no world that exists where they are even allowed to consider that they are wrong. So what happens when you have a war being fought by ignorant warriors who think that no matter what, they are right? Well, a good example of that is for decades after World War II, they still found Japanese warriors fighting the war in the jungles. There's a famous book about one, a dude who was there forever, but there's a lot of smaller examples that weren't as famous. But the point being, if you are so indoctrinated in your war, in your battle, that you can't even see the possibility that after years the war's over, you're gone, man. You have lost touch. You have lost what it means to be human. You are now living for your principles. You are now living for this imaginary I don't want to say war, but you're essentially living in a fantasy land of enemies that don't exist anymore. Okay, so when it comes to military, I mean that's kind of that's an extreme level, right? As your brain gets warped and you're just, everyone's an enemy. And if I leave, I will be killed. And it's a fight or flight thing. It's a survival thing. Okay. But what happens when you have people who are living in a normal society who can go to the store and buy stuff and go online and like they can work? They have all the rights of everybody else, but for some reason they have completely convinced themselves that that's not the case because they're living in a false narrative. That's really bad for society when we encourage that, because what happens is when you get a bunch of frustrated, alienated people, a lot of times as soon as they can, they will lash out. And this, from right now, we have a lot of with the LGBT stuff, with a lot of racism right now. But just rewind, y'all. Rewind, go back. Okay, we've been doing this forever. It's so cyclical at this point. You could form an economy around it, you could say. And I'm telling you, they do, man. But you get to this point where, you get to a point where echo chambers truly collapse. They break down all of this like false narrative that wasn't based off of anything real. It collapses, man. It's a cardboard house. The first rain, it just done. Can't do anything about it. So what happens when your entire life is predetermined based off of this ideological war that you've never even seen the battlefield of? You're reporting on this war from the comfort of your own home. And it's sad because I know what it means to feel like you're the victim. I know what it means to feel like, the world is out to get you. And I'm here to tell you that you are making those enemies up. There are bad people that exist, absolutely. But the chances you're going to run into them off the internet are so low. So low. And for the people who have experienced the bad parts of the world, and they know about the war that actually exists, man. Most of the time, you see a lot of those people take the high ground because they've lived it firsthand. They have chosen to live a better life already. But they don't, but the people... What helped them become that? Like, what helped them gain that revelation? Like, this ain't what I want to do. I don't want to be a gangbanger anymore. I don't want to be homeless anymore. I don't want to have to worry about getting stabbed whenever I wear this color anymore. Those people, the exceptions to the rule, I'm telling you, man, nobody has a better perspective on what it means to be a good person than the ones who have lived it. So stop trying to claim this false badge of oppression. You didn't earn it, man. You don't get the Purple Heart unless you took the bullet. Just because I was in the military doesn't mean that I go around spouting off about all these things that I'm entitled to because of what other people have done. Live your life for yourself and then attempt to influence others' lives only when it is possible, or the word I'm thinking of, it starts with a P, and it's positive is the word I'm thinking of. Okay, you really shouldn't be interfering in somebody's life unless you're trying to make their lives better. Now, granted, sometimes does that mean that you have to have an uncomfortable conversation? Sure, but those uncomfortable conversations could save somebody from a life of anger and hatred and like just short-sighted living. Because I don't want anybody to be that way. Like, that is it's such an angry way to live. But as Hogwarts Legacy is going on right now it's the top-selling game, PS5, Xbox, and PC pre-launch. Okay, so not only has the controversy made this game explode, a game that is pushing forward in spite of the controversy is succeeding 10x. And it just goes to show, don't play the game. Don't play the game. Because right now, anybody who's playing the Hogwarts Legacy game, as in the drama of it, is losing. People who are defending it, people who are attacking it, people who are doing anything other than talking about what Hogwarts is, they're just contributing to the fight, which you could argue is kind of what I'm doing. But I want the fight to end, man. I think if you don't want it, don't get it. If you do want it, do get it. And stop fighting a war that you're just not in. Pull your head up and breathe. Learn to love. Learn to love. Because the world needs more of it. And apparently Harry Potter's got a cool lightning bolt on his head or something. I don't know. I never watched the show. But I heard it was good.